My name is Sart Rowe. I'm the Technology and Innovation Director over at Eastside Legal Assistance Project and a Bellevue housing lawyer. I've been working with Legal Foundation of Washington to coordinate some trainings on technology for members of the Alliance for Equal Justice. Also, have a help desk where it can be emailed and help with any questions related to technology, ranging from how do you improve your security, or I happen to be hiring a bunch of housing attorneys, what kind of technology should I put in place to help them be successful in doing remote hearings in a month and a half. Cheryl, could you take a minute and introduce yourself? We've got Cheryl here from the Spokane County Volunteer Lawyers Program.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the invite. The Spokane program's just really pleased to share a little bit about how we do things. And I have my colleague Addison Jeske, who actually does so many of the frontline processes and will be joining us for Q&A today. A little bit about me. And the longer I've worked, I do end up sharing a little bit more personal stuff here, but I'm fairly new to legal aid, but not communications and volunteer work. I'm the director of the Spokane County Bar Volunteer Lawyers. I also founded with my husband a business that's almost 25 years old now. We've done a lot of statewide work, and we're still a little bit involved with the business, not partners, but we stay in touch with them. I'm also proud to receive the 2021 Junior Achievement Business Hall of Fame Laureate Award, actually tomorrow night. With my husband and our partners, so that's an honor. And I've taught for a long time, maybe 30 years at a lot of the universities around Eastern Washington. In a previous life, I worked for Primera when it was MSC. I'm Canadian, which my colleagues like to tease me about my accent, but I am a U.S. citizen. I've been married for a long time, 40 years, and feel, pretty connected through my family of Colville Confederate tribal members and my children and grandchildren. So it's an honor to be here and join everyone, and I'm looking forward to sharing a few tips and having Addison back me up when I don't know the answer, because I haven't been here that long.
Thank you. I was following your direction. Hello, everybody. My name is Esperanza Borboa. Everybody calls me Espy. I'm the program director for Eastside Legal Assistance Program and have the pleasure of working with SART, which is an awesome experience. I have a long history working in civil rights and human rights with community-based organizations, in King County primarily and in Eastern Washington. There's different bullets on there that, thank you, Sart, for shortening it, because it was very wordy and I just didn't want to have everything in there. But as the program director, I oversee our legal clinics. We manage about 42, 43 legal clinics every month in family law, general law, immigration, and bankruptcy. We also produce Know Your Rights workshops and different presentations for the community and for community partners who want to know how they can better help the clients that they serve and what they can and cannot do. For example, we've done workshops with a nonprofit organizations on when employees might be crossing the line in regards to employment assistance for undocumented individuals, because they want to be able to provide that service, but they don't want to get the organization in trouble. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get the clients in trouble. So we were able to come in and provide some information. And we also, I also work with our other directors to enhance whatever work that is and goals that we're trying to achieve. I'll do a little plug for a pet project that I think is extremely important that I'm hoping we get funding for this year, but whether we do or not, it will happen. It's to do a legal literacy pilot project here in King County, and then work with it to develop it for others. But regarding online clinics, I'm looking forward to sharing with you more about what it is that we're doing, how we've done that. We were able to transition on the week of March 9th. We transitioned from in-person to online clinics when the pandemic hit. It took us 2 weeks, a week of solid being on the phone with attorneys. But anyway, we'll get more into that later. And I won't say too much more about me. I think it's really, I want to hear about you and what challenges you're facing and what questions you might have later on. Thank you.
And next we have Elizabeth Fitzgerald.
Yeah. Thanks, Art. So I'm Elizabeth Fitzgerald. I'm the Executive Director of the Clark County Volunteer Lawyers Program down here in the bottom left of the state. And I am not an attorney, but I have a very long history working in nonprofits locally. I have an MBA in nonprofit management, worked in healthcare, in youth advocacy, and the joining thread is definitely that nonprofits are always put in a position to lift extraordinary weights without the tools to do so. And tech can make this so much easier. And so I really try to make it my goal to find manageable, simple tech solutions for us and our community partners, and always have an open door to brainstorm with any other organization in the Alliance for how they can do the same. So excited to talk more about what we've been doing during the pandemic.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The takeaways, we're going to talk about some basic tips for clinics and online clinics in particular, the technology that we use and the costs, and we're also here to answer your questions. Please feel free to type into the chat box or to unmute and ask a question at any time. The size of this group is enough that we can have some conversations as part of this. We're going to be starting here with the Spokane County Bar Volunteer Lawyer Program, and a little bit about kind of the technology that you guys use here. And I can advance the slides. Let me know when you're ready for the next one.
So we, Addison will actually in the Q&A can elaborate more on technology, but we do rely on technology to gather the intakes through various means, of course. I think a lot of the programs use Legal Server and SurveyMonkey and phone technology where they do the intakes on the phone, and some of the pieces come together that way. But I think if I can, we want to emphasize the softer side of thinking through remote clinics, the people side and the community building side. And we feel that now, like has been said in many Zoom meetings that I've been on in the last year or so during COVID, now is the time to get creative. We have a real opportunity. And like we talked about when we were setting up here, technology is very important to enhance our reach and our ability to connect. But it is only as good as the humans that use it. And I think that in our Spokane program, we feel that we've been successful in our remote clinics because we've emphasized the human side. We've nurtured the human side and really emphasized the relationships. And that's both our relationships with our attorneys, our volunteers, and our clients. And we always treat them with respect, even in a busy time. And that, of course, is easier said than done. We all feel the pressure of serving as many people as we can, as fast as we can. And like Elizabeth said, that burden falls on us many a time without the resources that we'd like or maybe could have in private industry. But, that's what the creativity is all about. And so I'll start with our first tip, which, and so many of these will be a review, and so I won't, belabor the point. I love the little ear there of the basset hound. But you just couldn't, if you were to give 10 kind of leadership things that you could focus on. And that's been a big area of my study and work, my life's work. And I'd say 9 out of 10 of them are based on listening. You just can't be effective without listening. And so, listening to the needs, meeting the needs, really hearing, not just listening, but hearing and being willing to change if that is called for based on, are things working? Maybe they're working for you, but maybe they're not working as well for the clients that we serve or our volunteers. So that is one of the first most important tips.
So there's a quick question here, which is like, how do you do that? What process do you go through for listening? Do you like reach out and call them, or do you do surveys,
Yes.
or what do you do?
Yes, and we'll go into that, and we can also elaborate in the Q&A. We absolutely do. We make sure when we do the intake we use a form, of course, like everybody does, but we also try to really keep coming back to and I've heard it, we all sort of are in close proximity here in our office in Spokane. And so I hear this 20 times a day, from the intakes. What is it that you're really trying to achieve? And really listening to the answer. So we do that on the intakes. Yes, we do follow up. And then we ask people, how is it going? Are you still having the same issue that you reached out with us in the first place? And finding out that life happens, things change, they have moved on, or things have got worse. So we make careful notes in our files so that when they do get to their volunteer appointment, the records are up to date and the person feels like they've been heard. And also we prepare the attorney or the volunteer in that way. So the remote clinics, again, and I think this has been said, and certainly we feel this way too, they do present a real opportunity. A lot of people like them. A lot of the volunteers like them. A lot of the clients like them. In a busy schedule with people working different shifts and having to worry about, like so many families of all types have moved their childcare situation to the home, to remote. We have attorneys calling from the car waiting to pick up their own kids. We have people on their way to work, calling in. It needs to be a very flexible system to suit the needs that are in reality happening throughout the system during COVID, and perhaps will continue to as we move on here. A lot of these things are not going to go away, and we like to look at it as an opportunity. And proactive outreach is very important throughout the process, and we can't just assume that once appointments are set, that either the volunteer or the client that's receiving the help and assistance, that the situation is static. And so we build in those at least a couple calls from the time the appointment is set. And then in terms of preparing preparing the client and the attorney for their session together in the actual clinic, we like to give them a lot of coaching around, start to fill out the forms if that's the relevant piece that they're trying to get help with. And, really try to think through your questions, anticipate, write down your questions. And we like to avoid surprises at all costs, of course. And so sometimes they happen, things will change and something will arise during the appointment itself. But we like to anticipate and keep the clients and the attorneys in the loop with reminders about, remember, filling out the paperwork is your responsibility. Our attorneys can't fill that out for you, and things like that are, pretty basic, but they bear repeating, and we find that it's always worthwhile to coach a client through that process. And then we've really used this as a recruiting piece, I think, in working with our volunteers schedule in terms of that they can call in the evening, they could work status conference, which isn't a remote clinic, but that's another service that we provide over here that maybe some programs do. But also, tell us what your preferred schedule is, and we'll send clients during that preferred schedule. And I think it's important it's a matter of respect, of course, but also, a happy volunteer is a steady volunteer, and some want the hands-on work in the courtroom, at the status conference like I referred to, but also some their preferred way to volunteer is to do it on the phone on their schedule and to be able to complete a session. We allow them up to, a few sessions, but we seldom have, trouble recruiting attorneys and having them be pretty happy and satisfied with their schedule. And then this, of course, I referred to this, but the flexibility in terms of the appointment is one of the big recruiting tools, as I've said, but also it works we find that mutual time, the sweet spot between the clients and the attorneys, and that always enhances the experience to know that somebody's not going to be calling them at work, or they have to take time off work, or they have to find childcare. And those things just are not effective in these times. A lot of it is just respecting the relationship and building the community. And then we have a very good attendance rates. Very odd that a volunteer wouldn't show up, or a client wouldn't show up. And we have clients call and leave messages if things change. We encourage them to do that, of course. And we really respect the mutual relationship and try to get feedback after the appointment as well from both the volunteer and the client to make sure it met their needs, that they're clear on next steps, and that they're clear on what their to-dos are, to our earlier point about scope of service. Because, when people call in to our volunteer lawyers programs, many of us know this, the thought is, okay, we'll get a free attorney. And, yes, in a way they do, but there's responsibility on across the board. And they do have a lot of work to do, which, is a good thing if they can do it within the scope of their schedule and their ability to do that with a little guidance and coaching. And I referred to this earlier, but these are tips that give us such a good attendance rate and a success rate on our weekly calls that we set up, our clinics. And, it could be 2 rounds of calls, and, you just need to focus on that and make that happen. And it's worth it because, we have the common goal of serving as many people as possible.
So we've got 2 questions here. One
Okay.
is, with the low no-show rate, how far out do you schedule those appointments?
Well, Addison, and he could jump in now, but he's of course scheduling June appointments now and filling the clinic. So I think a couple weeks. Addison, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I can take that. In terms of scheduling out, it depends on the number of volunteers we have, quite honestly. As of right now, we like to keep it at like 2-3 weeks max. And if we're doing more than a week out, we'll do a confirm call a week out and touch base with the client. It's like we actually need the client to proactively reach back out to us, and we'll text and call a bunch of times to try and make that contact within a week before the appointment. And then we do a day of confirm call as well. In terms of the forms, often some clients will get the forms via Northwest Justice Project for Clear, and other other clients will get the forms in our office, and we give lots of information about how to get the forms. It's not a part of the clinic itself. We'll provide extra information in all of that pre-outreach, and then afterwards as well if clients are looking to get those forms. And then usually we'll provide the attorneys with relevant documents if there's court documents filed for the appointments, so that they can look at that and the client can look at that as well. In terms of staffing, that's me. I do all of this. And for the texts, right now we're just using Legal Server to do the texts. And so it's a human making the calls and sending out the emails and the texts. That's me. And we're working on /are thinking about ways to make this more efficient. Because understanding that, like, in terms of both efficiency to be able to do other things and also just efficiency. But yeah, so it's a human, but we are trying to figure out ways to get better so that it's more automated. In terms of doing all the intakes, for the most part, yes, that's me. And usually we refer clients to apply online or receive an intake through Clear, but we'll usually do at least a partial intake just to check in and confirm that information is accurate. And we accept walk-ins, walk-in clients as well to do intakes, and we'll do over the phone intakes for people without internet access. Our volume, so our volume, it depends in terms of, and it would probably be useful to have an exact number on this, but yes, and as of right now, it works, but making it more sustainable is something that I'm really excited to hear about. What some other groups are talking about. We're normally scheduling 4 remote clinics a remote clinic each week, usually where we've ramped it up to being 10 to 15 clients each appointment, is what the end goal is. There's usually a lot more clients that either don't end up confirming or decide they don't want support or are out of the scope of family law. And in terms of, that's the volume. 2-week backlog on entering intakes into Legal Server. Normally we try to do it within a week and make at least the first call within a week. That doesn't always happen. And we are lucky in terms of having some interns and volunteers that will come in and help make those intake calls. And that's something that we've been starting to do as of 2021 that's helped us ramp up to more, from like 5 clients to about 10, 15 clients per clinic. But in terms of backlog, we usually like to put the intakes in within a few days, but we tell clients within 2 weeks, and it will of course depend on staffing. And
we're going to switch over to ELAP at this point, myself and SV, talking about what we're doing. Technology overview. We are using a program now called SignUp, signup.com, in order to coordinate volunteers for future clinics. We record, or we're using Vimeo in order to share some trainings specifically, and we're using Zoom as one of the 2 ways. We are doing traditional phone clinics also, so we've got both technologies there. And Aspi, could you talk a little bit about why you're so excited about SignUp and some of the features that you like for this that are kind of automated or make things easier?
I learned about this a few months ago, got very excited, pulled SART in and let's check this out. Looks like it might be what we need. The process we've been using up until now, we've been doing these clinics for about 30 years. And of course they've grown and we've broadened our scope quite a bit, but the process is very cumbersome. And so sign up, what it does is you can create schedules for each of the clinics that we have. And like I mentioned, we do like 43 clinics a month. So I can have a schedule for each of those clinics and repeated schedule, because some of them are every week, some of them are every 2 weeks, some of them are once a month, some of them are every other month. So we can kind of look at that schedule and maybe tweak it a little bit, but it'll permit me to be able to put all 43 clinics into sign up. And then invite our volunteers, our attorney volunteers, to sign up. So I would put them in the list of participants, and they would look at the schedule that is sent to them and sign up. And once they're in there, they can manage their schedule. They can see all the times that they are signed up for a clinic. If they can't make it, they can switch with somebody. If it turns out that nobody is available, then the administrator, myself or SART, will get in an email saying, that this attorney needs help to find a switch or do something. And we do that already, but in this process, it lets them really go in and work with each other to figure it out. And it also sends reminders to them for the clinic that's coming up, because right now we do those reminders. We send email reminders to all our attorneys. So it's just, and I'll have all that data there so I can pull up reports. It'll tell me, it'll show me where I need to maybe do a little bit more outreach, because I have pockets that are not filled, slots that aren't filled. I will be able to see that just in one look, rather than the way that we're doing it now is really not, I don't want to do it anymore. We have our clinic manager who has been doing that for about a dozen years. And so I told her I wanted to try and do it this year so I can see what is involved in it. And once I saw it, I thought, nah, we're not doing this. This is, with technology, this is great. So I'm really looking forward to it. We just did a test clinic and sent it out to some of our attorneys to see how user-friendly it was, how easy it was, how intuitive it was. And so far, there hasn't been any problems. And so now we're going to get going on this. So it means sending out an email to all our attorneys, anybody that's volunteered with us over the last 12 months, and letting them know that we're going to be using this site, so that so when they get this email from sign up, they'll know what it is and it won't be a total surprise. It'll require some phone calls to each of them. And that's what we did when we transferred from in-person to phone appointments. We called every single volunteer attorney and let them know what we were doing and make sure that they felt comfortable and knew what to do. And if somebody said they wanted to use Zoom sometimes, we talked about that. So we set up everything at the very beginning. I'll do the same thing here. We'll talk to each attorney. It's not enough to do an email. I'm an organizer, a longtime organizer. And one of the rules that I learned a long time ago when the information superhighway came along is that emails really don't organize much. You have to have other ways of being able to communicate with people. And it kind of goes to the 2 rounds of calls that you talked about, Cheryl, that it's not enough to send an email or a text to somebody. You have to sometimes call them. So I'm really excited about this. Is that enough, Sart? Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So we're going to be very happy with it, I'm sure. And the one thing, the advantage we have SART that whenever something happens, it's like I am not the most tech person, believe me. I'm the least techie person in the organization. And Mhm. Sart, there's a question in the chat about sign up. And one thing is that for the clinics, if there is a client that contacts us and they need a specific kind of a focus, an attorney that's focused on a specific area of law, the use of sign up doesn't limit us to be able to schedule that attorney. Because of legal server, they're not working together. So it's very easy for us to be able to try to identify an attorney that does that, and then just reach out to that attorney and schedule them clinic that the attorney is doing, or else assign that client to that attorney through legal server. So we have a little bit of flexibility in there.
And we can change the names in sign up or the types of positions. We can say like family law DV or wills and estates or paralegal general family law, so that individuals can get an idea of a particular need in a particular time spot also. Although with last minute cancellations, we still are using email to reach out to individuals to cover those spots. Also, just essential, make sure to have that backup. Like if the client doesn't show up there on the tech side, on the calling and outreach side of things, practice with your staff in advance, just so that they know everything about how the technology works, and have somebody second there that just in case the tech person disconnects, that somebody else knows how to do it. Make sure that you got two people who are aware of kind of how the tech works. And the big thing that I've learned, or really implemented over this last year, is need to get feedback both from the lawyers over what works and doesn't work, and from the clients. So we have developed a form on Microsoft Forms that will collect some of that information for client feedbacks. That used to be a paper form, it's going online. And we did focus groups with attorneys over the different, how their experiences were and what we could do to improve those. Turning it over at this point to Clark County Volunteer Lawyer Program.
Thank you, Sart. I am focusing on pretty heavily on kind of how we've used Zoom over the past year, which I think a lot of people have in some way used Zoom. But I did want to just very briefly address all the little pieces in front of that because I wrote down notes as other folks were talking and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably say this. So we also went home in the middle of March last year under the impression that we would be gone for like 5 weeks and come back. So we have a VoIP phone system and there's an app that people can put on their cell phone. So folks just went home with an app on their cell phone that lets them, call to and from the office and have been maintaining on this app for like 15 months. So I wanted to point out that there's, that's something that we had done. Also, we sent everybody home with a laptop. But then it was a lot of like, okay, well, how do we continue to replicate what we've been doing in person? And before the pandemic, we were heavily dependent. Like we wouldn't even do phone consults. That was like, for some reason, of course, we would never allow that. We need to have face-to-face and people need to know all this stuff. So definitely pivoted a lot. And some of that things that we really relied on in person were paperwork, participation agreements, and we did an after-visit survey for every single client, much like ELAP. Those things have had to be transferred into, we tried DocuSign for a bit, and it just really was way too expensive by the end because of our volume. And we're now on Adobe Sign for paperwork. And then we use a Google form that mirrors our in-person paper survey. Now, the barriers that our clients face with tech mean that there's a lot of fails on getting these returned to us. This is a really low return rate on those things. So that's definitely something we're still working out. But as far as the actual visits, we committed to Zoom pretty quickly. And the first thing we did is we trained all of our staff, and then we had some sessions of training of our volunteer attorneys where we just kind of all worked in Zoom and we troubleshooted together and had them answer or ask questions. And what drives the determination of if a client is going to have a Zoom or a phone visit is there's a component that is the attorney's preference. So we have a couple attorneys who don't even have a computer. They're just like really averse to anything tech. And we know that they are going to be phone people. But we specifically have a little questionnaire that we do as part of our intake about the tech savviness of our client. Have you ever used Zoom? Do you feel comfortable? Do you have a smartphone? Do you want to practice? And our staff determine if that is what the client can do. And we really try to have that drive the visit. So we do use Zoom by default. And it's pretty, as far as the different platforms, it's the most user-friendly, but it's still pretty hard for a lot of folks. And I think go to the next slide. So that's definitely the goal. When we do Zoom, there's a lot of steps because our staff each have to have a paid access where they can create individual Zoom meetings. And then they need to share that information with the attorney and with the client. And if there's an interpreter, with the interpreter. So it's much more staff heavy as far as the amount of time that it takes them to organize all these. And you get one thing wrong or you're not paying attention when you're typing in and you might not include something. So they use templated emails that they send out to clients and to attorneys that just have a space where they just replace the Zoom link and are like, this is what you're going to click on. So that makes it pretty easy. And they also have instructions that they attach, which I think I show in a little bit. But you can go back one for a second. But we are definitely, this is the flow that we use if we aren't using Zoom, which is the traditional, if there's an interpreter, we either give the attorney instructions to hey, call the interpreter, and then they can, tag in the client, or the attorney, either they just are like, no, I just want to call in from my office and I don't care if they have my office number, and that's fine. We really discourage it, but that's fine. Or we tell the client that they're going to get a call from a block number and the attorney just starts 6-7 to block. All right. So next, what we did when we decided to commit to Zoom was we said we need to make like step-by-step instructions for how to do this. So we built in, like screenshots, and there's a version of this for the attorneys and there's a version of this for the clients. So the first thing we do is we email the client and we say, here's all that stuff. There is a little template. If you need to call in, this is what you're going to do to call in. If for some reason the link doesn't work or you aren't able to do that, then you're going to pop in and this is all the things that you're going to see to do that. So we created that and we attach those instructions to that email that goes to them. Okay, next slide. And then we do very similar for the attorney, but it's from the attorney perspective. And just shows them, so they get an email that has their list of clients with corresponding Zoom links. So they need to pop into a different Zoom link for each meeting. Something that has come up is that they realize the client's not popping in. Maybe they just want to call the client. We don't have the phone number right there. So then they're like going and logging into the legal server to try to grab the phone number to call them. So that's hiccupy and something that we've been working through. So, and then this is what it looks like if we have an interpreter. We actually just put it in the actual booking information when we do a request for an interpreter, and it's worked really seamlessly. We have one interpretive service that we use for paid interpretation. And then if there's a phone appointment, they put a little note in there. To use this sort of hodgepodge, everybody's on Zoom. Majority of our appointments are on Zoom. For 9 pro users, which is what we have right now, this is just our organization, because we've got anybody who is scheduling appointments really needs to have this, and you can't have concurrent meetings on the same account. So you have to go, okay, well, if I oversee family law and I have 2 family law clinics going on at the same time, I can't schedule them under my account. So I'm going to have to use somebody else's. So there's a lot of sharing of accounts, which gets a little messy. But it's after our 30% nonprofit discount, which I think was from TechSoup, we're $950 a year for using Zoom. And there is a Zoom phone feature, which we have not yet used, but started checking out, which you can call somebody from within a Zoom room. So they could put in like the client phone number and the client would receive a call. All right. So there's a lot of hangups. This is still an incredibly high barrier for many of our clients. Just even reading through 3 pages of instructions in a Word document is a barrier. And then saying, okay, we're going to text and email you the Zoom link. Then they're like, I haven't found it. And staff are like walking them through, like, what type of email do you have? Is it Google? Okay, so there's a little bar and they're teaching them how to search for their email. So everybody on our staff has become tech support in trying to guide them just to find the email that has the link that they need to find. And some people call in and it's like they probably need to unmute themselves, and we don't really know how to guide them through that other than telling them and hoping they can hear. And also the attorneys get confused, and because attorneys get confused, just like everybody. So we'll say, you got an email and it should have all your links, and they're like, I can't find it. And so then staff are doing the same thing with attorneys that they're doing with clients. Like, okay, let's look for it together, or I'll resend it and bump it up to the top of your inbox. So yeah, this is like pretty much for an appointment. A staff person has to make the meeting, send that info to the client, to the attorney, to the interpreter. If there's a shadowing an attorney, they have to send that to them also. They're often doing practice runs with the clients. If they identify they've never used Zoom, they're like, okay, well, let's set up a practice run. And then they're doing that troubleshooting tech during it when they're getting kind of panic calls or emails from attorneys saying, I don't know where my client is. And from my side, administering the organization, it's, like I said, you have to have a lot of users that you're paying for just to like accommodate the fact that you have multiple moving parts at the same time. It is time consuming, and so the more time staff spend on just working through Zoom, the less time they can spend on just other core aspects of their job. And they can't miss any steps. It's like every single step counts. And it's not like staff are really bumbling through this, but it just means they have to put all their focus on, like, now I'm doing my Zoom appointments, so I'm going to get all those out and I'm going to get all my steps. What we have been doing in all of our family law clients have what we call pre-appointments. And so they meet with a volunteer who's not an attorney, but whose job it is to prep them for their appointment with a family law attorney. So they're like, this is your paperwork, and these are the things to expect. And when they use these words, this is what this means. And a component of that has become prepping for Zoom. So this is like the test. We'd rather have them fail on using Zoom with a non-attorney volunteer whose job it is just to be there and coach, because then they can call them and they can walk them through it, and they use a portion of that appointment to try to figure out if they can get them on Zoom or not. And similarly, on the other end of that, we have a courtroom readiness prep guy who's a non-attorney, but he prepares clients for appearing pro se in court. And part of what he does is now talk about how do you appear on Zoom in court, because we have so many virtual hearings and our court uses Zoom. But just like ELAB, we have been soliciting feedback from our clients and from our volunteers consistently. There's too many steps. I don't have to go through all these steps. And from our staff, really. Everybody just wants to hit a button and just be there. That's the dream. On Zoom, if you're on a cell phone, you have to download the app. And they want to just be able to schedule all the appointments in the same interface, instead of like, okay, I've done this and now I have to go send you an email and paste the stuff. And then in Legal Server, I'm going to use Legal Server to text you a link. There's just a lot of different things going on. And it'd be nice to just be able to call clients and not have it look like a blocked number. It's a very scary thing to get a call from a blocked number. I don't answer calls from a blocked number. So that's definitely the feedback that we've gotten. Next, please. So what our solution has been for the past year is we are just making our own. We're developing our own virtual platform to house all of our clinics. And it's browser-based, so there's no accompanying app. If somebody has the internet on their phone, then this will work for them. It integrates with our existing Twilio account, so folks can call in or they get text reminders. There is from the attorney perspective, they're jumping into this platform. They're having a video call. When their video call ends, they type their notes right there, and those come to us. Same interpreters are very easily invited. These are some screenshots, which I know are kind of hard to see, but you pretty much just you have a list of clients that are going to be seen that day, and you got maybe an interpreter and an attorney, and you just kind of click for each appointment. These are the 3 I'm going to throw together in a room, and I'm going to put them in at 2, and then these 3 at 2:30, and the visits are just populated, and those links are automatically go to an email or text. And the best thing is that once a client is engaged with us, they can use the same link for any other visit they have. If they can find any link that ever came to them from us, it's going to get them to talk to their attorney next time, because the video rooms that we're creating are tied to the client. They're not tied to the appointment. Okay, next. Those are some adorable screenshots of us making this. So the one on the left, that's the attorney view. So they just have their list of clients on the side. What we're actually going to have it do is, as staff enter it, it's going to be video preference or phone preference. If it's video preference, they just see a video button and then a little link under that says, having trouble with video, try calling, and they hit that. Either of those, if they hit start phone call, it just immediately calls the client. They hit start video, it just pops up the video. And if they're phone preference, the only option they have is to start a phone call. And the client on the other side sees that. It has a little note that's like, you made it to your appointment, please wait 15 minutes. Here's the phone numbers to call our office if you don't see an attorney in front of you within 15 minutes of your appointment. The client interface exists in English, Spanish, and Russian. So I think that is it. What program is this virtual legal clinic? Clark County Volunteer Lawyers Program. So we're just making our own. It doesn't exist. We couldn't find anything that does what we wanted to do. And that is, if somebody only has texting, that they could just get a text and hit a button, and all of a sudden, in whatever way is best for them, they're talking to an attorney. That's the problem we've been trying to solve for this whole time. And yes, there is a question that says Google question mark. What are you using to make it? So Bubble is like a way to build apps or web apps, but without programming a lot. So that's something that we're using. The video interface is, I can't remember what it's called. It is not Ditzy anymore. We've gone through sorry, it's been long on this journey, but should launch soon, and happy to talk more about that at a later date.
There was a question back here over what suggestions or tips does anybody here have for increasing the return rate on kind of those surveys or documents that are out there. And I will say that back when I was at NJP, we did try doing the survey as text messages with yes/no type answers, and that was definitely a serious challenge. Done a little bit better with the web-based form where they get a link, as they're more likely to make it through that form. The timing has also mattered a lot. The closer it is to the particular clinic, the more likely you are to get your feedback. The problem is if you want to ask questions about outcomes, often it's going to be a while before that case is done, and it's very difficult. I would love to hear tips from other people on how we can get that kind of better return rate for longer term outcomes.
It's something that we're working on too. We do gift card drawings to try and incentivize, and I try and send out within a week of service. But tips on how to increase that rate is definitely something that we're trying to figure out as well.
And we've been having that internal conversation at eLab that when we are asking clients for feedback or focus groups or their time, how do we compensate them for that? Their time is valuable, it is useful, and very important to clients. So we're trying to figure out how to integrate that into our future feedback. They ask if there's another option to the star 6-7. Some of the clients or some of the apps that you put onto your phone as part of the voice over IP will have another option, but star 6-7 is the most common, and I definitely feel what Elizabeth is saying, especially when you're dealing with senior clients. There is a large skepticism for block numbers because of scams and other things. So.
No other option. We just tell clients a bunch of times it might be a block number. Please watch. It might be a block number.
Right. That's what we do as well. We just, as many times as every time we communicate with them, it will be a block number.
Yeah, Clay's got a good point that they use a particular Google Voice number or some other number as an option there. So we are at the hour at this point. I want to say thank you to Legal Foundation of Washington for funding in order to help put these on. We are going to be sending out a survey within a few days after this of potential other topics throughout the rest of the year. We're looking at 4 to 5 more of these. Second, if you are asked to be a participant on here, we have support in helping slides, helping with tech support, all of that type of stuff. We really want your expertise so that we can knowledge share and show what other programs are doing. Also, feel free to reach out to me with any tech questions. My email is sart, S-A-R-T, @elap.org. I will put that into the chat. I look forward to finding out what other programs are doing and sharing some other best practices here. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Addison. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you, Esperanza, for coming out and sharing your knowledge today.
Thank you, everyone. We really learned a lot. Thanks.